Bonjour à toutes et à tous, je suis ici avec mon ami Roo Osterfield de Elite Success Clinic pour la deuxième fois. Et aujourd'hui, on va parler sur toutes les choses de développement personnel. Bienvenue! Welcome everybody, I'm here again with my good friend Roo Osterfield from Elite Success Clinic for the second time. And this time I'm going to give him the floor so we can talk about personal development, because the last time I didn't really get to pull much stuff out of him because he's got a lot in there.
I am full of it. It's true.
He's full of it.
Yeah.
Say hello to everybody.
Hello, nice to meet you.
All right. Roo est une maître thérapeute avec plusieurs modalités. Roo is a master therapist with different modalities. We'll just jump straight into it. So my first question is, what is a poverty contract? Qu'est-ce que un contrat de pauvreté? C'est quoi ça?
Right, poverty contracts. Okay, it gets a little bit... How to explain those in a basic way. So basically, the amount of money that you can receive, money is a vibration of abundance, and abundance is a vibration of love. So everybody has, if you think of a scale of 1 to 1,000, we've got the vibration scale from power versus force. So everyone's like, oh, I'm high vibe, I'm low vibe. But your financial template and the amount of money you can handle in your energetic system, your energetic container for money, has a limit on it. So you could actually be incredibly high vibration, but have a very small container for money. So we get poverty contracts where a soul has incarnated and poverty is actually part of the soul lesson. So that would be the major contract. Where it gets a little bit more complicated is where we then get generational curses. We'll try that one again. It's different.
Le deuxième caméra.
Yeah, that's probably okay. So where it gets a little bit more complicated, so I might want to, if I, so my own life actually, I have a twin flame, not a romantic twin flame, it's actually a blood relative. And one of the things I was learning about in this lifetime was money and power. And so I incarnated into a family that was less financially well off, but one of the relatives is very financially well off. And so I had another incarnation with the well-off family. And so they start with money, and then they're learning to connect to true purpose.
Money.
They start with money, and then they're learning to connect to true purpose. And then we start with true purpose, and then we learn to connect to money. So the soul does it in both directions at the same time. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you then get somebody who not part of their incarnational path around the poverty, but we're learning about love, we're learning about connection, we're learning about achievement, we're learning about struggle, we need the duality of that. We might incarnate into a family, and the family has a group vibration for the amount of money it can handle. Now, when a family has a group vibration for the amount of money it can handle, is probably going to be one of your next questions, you could then say that a poverty contract becomes part of a generational curse.
Okay.
So there's about 130 different kinds of poverty contract, which is why it gets a bit more. But to explain it really basically, just as the psychology of it, if you look at, if people watching this, if you think about your dad, and if you had a good relationship with your dad, even if you have a bad relationship with your dad, you learn when you're growing up that that's the amount of hard work you need to do in order to earn a certain amount of money. So my dad, for instance, would get up at about 7 o'clock in the morning and he'd get home about 8 o'clock at night, he'd eat and then he'd go and do some more work. So I learned that to earn about £40,000, £50,000, you need to work that amount of time. So then as I'm growing up, if I want to earn £100,000, my unconscious believes that I need to work double the amount that he worked.
So that becomes a contract as well?
So
some sort of contract.
we've got, so that's the thing, there's different kinds of contracts. So poverty contract is literally just a contract with poverty consciousness, but where the poverty consciousness comes from, where it gets a little bit more complicated.
Why would somebody have a poverty contract?
So if you think of, in order for us to experience ourselves, we need a background to experience ourselves on. So if you think about, if you wrote a play where you wanted to be a gunfighter, because I know you're part cowboy, you've always wanted to be a gunslinger, right? Now you can't be a gunslinger cowboy in the middle of tooting. I mean, actually probably tooting you could, but you couldn't be one, you know, walking through Kensington. What you'd need is the Wild West. You'd need a saloon, you need a bar, so you need this sixth dimensional aspect which provides the experience. So if you want to learn about pride, success, tenacity, achievement, you want to learn about bonds, say I want to learn about masculine and feminine and I want to provide for a woman, I need to find a woman who doesn't have enough money so I can provide for her. So when we start looking at poverty, the sirens are after me, when we start looking at poverty, the amount of money we have provides the background for most of the things we want to achieve in life.
Ok. Donc, contrat de pauvreté, en fait, c'était très compliqué. Il y a à peu près 130 types de contrats de pauvreté. En fait, nous avons différents taux de fréquence. Il y a des personnes qui ont haute fréquence, qui basse fréquence, et aussi le vaisseau pour cette fréquence est à part de fréquence. So when you were talking about the just going back to the frequency and the vessel of the frequency, is that same as saying like I have like this spirit, this much spirit, and then but my like body is like petite?
Yes.
That's the same?
Yeah, exactly like that.
Donc le vaisseau c'est par exemple j'ai un corps très petit, mais j'ai un esprit très grand. C'est comme ça aussi, par exemple, on peut avoir une fréquence très haute, mais le vaisseau est très petit. Donc, par exemple, nous avons une fréquence, il y a une certaine fréquence pour l'abondance, mais il faut aligner avec le vaisseau parce que des fois le vaisseau est trop petit.
I've got an easy way of describing it. It might help. Imagine that you're a billionaire, but you only have a small purse. So you can have all of the financial, you can have all of the power, all of the love in the world, but the amount you can carry with you physically is a tiny amount. Some people have a big purse, some people have a little purse. So money has nothing to do with how high your vibration is. It has everything to do with how much conditioning you have related to the money.
Ok. Donc, ce n'est pas en fonction de disponibilité de l'abondance, parce que l'abondance c'est partout. C'est en fonction de portefeuille, votre propre portefeuille. Même si vous êtes un billionnaire, milliardaire.
A millionaire.
Milliardaire.
Yeah, perfect French.
Just make it like sound
millionaire.
Milliard. Mais ton portefeuille est très petit, ça sert à rien. And then you also talked about et après je lui demandais pourquoi une personne a pourquoi ça existe un contrat de pauvreté. Et il nous dit ok, c'est pour l'expérience parce que nous sommes ici sur la terre pour l'expérience de différentes choses. Par exemple, si je voudrais expérimenter la vie comme un cowboy, je dois un lieu pour un cowboy, ce n'est pas la France, par exemple.
Your financial worth sets the background.
Et aussi le vaisseau, ce vaisseau qu'on en parle, et en fonction de notre conditionnement, it's conditioning the vessel, right? It's all about conditioning.
Yeah.
So how do we make our vessel bigger? It seems like that's the problem. Comment je peux élargir cette vaisseau, parce que je pense que ça c'est le problème.
Well, if you can think of it like the way I like to look at it is like weaving. So there's these lots of threads, and what we need to do is for each person find individual threads that is used to make the purse, the poverty, the financial thing. So first one that everybody has is the masculine and feminine. So for you to be a woman and be provided for by a man, you need to make sure you don't have much money, because the more money you have, the harder it is to find a man. This is one of the biggest poverty contracts.
For women.
For women, yeah. For men, one of the biggest poverty contracts is that we want to look up to our father. And so the moment we start earning as much money as our dad ever did, if we get about 2,000 or 3,000 higher than that, we don't want to look down on him, we want to look up to him. So then that limits us out. So there's different ones for the masculine and feminine, but for every single person, there's a set. In fact, one thing we could do together is if I could teach people to dowse, we could give a list of poverty contracts, and then people can find out which ones they've got.
Or 130 of them.
Well, we don't have to do, we do the main ones. Yeah.
Ok. Donc, c'est compliqué aussi pour élargir, mais c'est possible pour élargir cette vaisseau. Imaginez un panier ou tapisserie. Il y a différentes fils qui enlacés, on doit déenlacer, c'est un mot, déenlacer tous les fils, par exemple. Pour les femmes, il y a un conditionnement, une croyance que, ok, je dois être pauvre, comme ça, les hommes peuvent me sauver. Pour certaines, ok? Pour certains hommes, les hommes qui admirent son père, au moment qu'il dépasse le salaire de son père, ça c'est le limite, donc c'est une croyance limitante. So it's all about limiting beliefs.
It's conditioning, just call it conditioning, because we've got genetic conditioning, karmic conditioning, incarnational conditioning, then we've got belief structures, so you inherit a financial template from your parents, and they condition you around finances. But then in a past life, you might have been robbed, you might have been killed by highwaymen, you might have been blackmailed, and so then you have conditioning.
C'est aussi en fonction de notre vie passée.
A very common poverty contract is when we have poverty as a group consciousness. This is a really big one. So in the old days where you had tax collectors and rich people abusing the poor people, but then the poor people become proud of being poor. So humility, religion comes. So
it's a big one. Yeah, I had a poverty contract myself because I was a nun in a past life. Yeah, so that's one. Très intéressant. So what is a generational curse? C'est quoi une curse?
Yeah.
Maudite générationnelle.
Okay, so generational curses, real generational curses, are incredibly rare. But what we call the generational curse isn't a curse. You can get a curse that goes down through the generations. And that's where usually you have a curse put on your name. So again, if we go back to, if you think of Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets hated the Montagues. And so if you cursed the Capulets, it would go down through the generations.
Yeah.
But what we call a generational curse is where we have survival conditioning that comes down through the generations. So
more like inherited.
An inherited belief structure. So we know from the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton that belief structures come down through the DNA.
Oh.
And so from that, you then get things like survival consciousness. Do you want to?
Yeah. Actuellement, il y a deux types de curses maudites, générationnelles qu'on parle. Transgénérationnel, mais en notant cette curse générationnelle, c'est justement les croyances limitantes qui passent par notre ADN. Ça, c'est aussi les étudiés des docteurs.
Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Yeah. Dr. Bruce Lipton, le généticiste. Donc, toutes les croyances passent par notre ancêtre, mère et père, qui passent par le sang.
Right. So an example would be my family.
Mm-hmm.
So my great-grandfather lost his job, couldn't get another job, and ended up, because he couldn't provide for his family, he committed suicide. Now, what happened with that was it created a huge amount of toxic energy in the masculine, that we're not enough, that we're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so that then created a belief structure that then came down through the children, and the children that were there, and then my father, and then into me, related to the masculine side of things, where when I was sort of younger, I would always find partners. No matter, I could walk into a bar and I could talk to everybody, and the one person I fancied would be the person with the biggest issues that there possibly was. And I wouldn't know that, I wouldn't know for months. Yeah, or something would happen to them a month later. And I was always finding people that I needed to rescue, because part of me was trying to make up for what my great-grandfather had done, even though I didn't know.
Son exemple est son arrière-grand-père, en fait, qui malheureusement était viré de son travail, et après il n'arrive pas à trouver un autre travail. Et à la fin, malheureusement, il quittait ce monde. Et cette croyance de I'm not good enough, je suis pas je suis pas capable, je ne mérite pas ce monde, cette abondance. Il passe par ses fils et les autres générations jusqu'à vous, et dans le vidéo, tout le temps, chaque personne qu'il rencontrait, romantically or even not romantically,
Both, but mostly romantic.
toutes les personnes qu'il rencontre, so what happens when you encounter them? You make up for...
I would just, yes, so I was trying to, on the masculine side, we had this need to repent, like make up for, atone for our worthlessness. So I would find people that needed rescuing, so that I had that chance to...
Ok. Chaque fois, dans toutes les rencontres, ils cherchent des femmes qui ont besoin de sauver, de sauvetage, comme ça. Et c'est l'inconscient. Il peut améliorer tous les sins des autres générations.
But the interesting thing is that was part of my soul's ascension journey.
Ah, mais la chose très intéressante, et c'est partie de son chemin d'ascension.
Because going into a situation where I had to fix somebody else, but not ever achieving that, or then when I did achieve that, they would leave, eventually makes me focus on myself and learn self-love, that I can be loved without rescuing.
Ah, sweet is that.
Yeah.
Donc éventuellement, il comprend que je dois, il doit, nous, il doit aimer soi-même. Ok. Oui. Prendre soin de soi. Ok.
Sweet in a gut-wrenchingly painful, horrible, horrific way, but it was beautiful.
Okay. So what about blockages? What are those? Where does that?
What's a block? No, I can answer
This
that
is the
one.
part where we edit things out.
Okay.
C'est quoi un blocage énergétique, par exemple?
What's an energetic
what
block?
is an energetic block?
Okay. Right, so.
Because now these seem like very like generational, karmic, and mental blockages as well.
So, an energetic block is an emotional extension of a mental block. Now, most of the time when we look at generational blocks or emotional blocks or energetic blocks, they might continue into past lives and things like that, or into future lives. What we're looking at is the desire for a person to connect to love in all forms, but doing it wrong, so we connect into shadow rather than light. So if you think, for instance, I want to connect to power. Now, I can connect to power through love, or I could get angry and get in a fight and feel powerful. One of them is the light, one of them is the dark. So I'm still trying to connect to something positive, but the wiring is going into the shadow instead. So we have two sides, we have our light and our dark. Anytime we use our dark side to connect to love, that is a block.
It's brilliant. Nous avons deux côtés, deux chemins, deux choix, tout le temps, le chemin de lumière, le chemin positif et le chemin négatif ou l'ombre. Donc, tout le bout de notre vie est pour mener à l'amour. Mais je peux, par exemple, avoir de puissance avec la façon positive, avec l'amour, la façon négative, avec la haine. Donc, si je choisis une façon négative avec la haine, donc ça, c'est un blocage énergétique. Et aussi, il y a différents blocages. Il y a un blocage énergétique que l'on a déjà parlé, karmique, mental et émotionnel.
Yeah, I can give an example, but that's probably
I think that is like a lot to take in. Merci beaucoup. Do you have any last parting words?
Really looking forward to Toulouse. I think it's going to be an amazing thing, and yeah, really looking forward to working with you on our program.
Yes, come and join us in France for a retreat in April of 2024. I'm sure this won't be our last broadcast.
I'm sure there'll be many more. Oh.